live. All right. And here we are. Here we are. So let's get ready. I see Dr. Pugh there. Can you hear us, Dr. Pugh?
Yes, can you hear me?
Can she hear us, Mickey?
I can hear you. Can you hear me?
Okay, I think she can hear us.
Oh, I can see her.
Okay, I can. Can you hear us, Dr. Pugh?
Yes, can you hear me?
Oh,
I can't hear her through my.
should I hear her here?
You should.
Okay, we're just getting everything set, but while we're doing this, we're asking people to go and share because I'm so looking forward to this conversation with the president.
Thank you.
I'm just gonna tell you,
Right, yeah,
I heard through,
I can't wait.
you can't hear it?
not through my speakers. I mean, not through my.
Right, so we're just, but people, please go share while we get ready because I'm looking forward to this conversation that we're going to have.
We hinted at this conversation.
Yes, we
Okay.
did.
We hinted.
We told people we were going to have them both on.
We did. We
And
didn't
they're
say
both
what we were
on.
gonna do. We said we were gonna have Mike back
With a special guest.
with
With
a
the
special
oh,
guest.
that's right. And we
Yes.
do have our
So we
special guest. We have
hinted.
Dr. Pamela Pugh with us.
Can you hear me now?
So first of all, welcome. Thank you for joining another episode of Black Money Matters. We are your hosts. My name is Jamaica Patrick.
I'm Karen
Granny.
Weaver. And we're excited about today's episode of Black Money Matters because we said it's a follow-up and we're here with the
The
presidents. We
president.
said, this is the, let's have a conversation with the presidents. So I know you all can see through Zoom that we have Dr. Pamela Pugh with us, and she is the president,
Michigan State.
the State Board of Education. This is, in fact, this is her second term. She's already done 8 years with the
Mhm.
State Board of
And she was
Education
vice president.
as vice president, and now she was newly reelected, and she is the president, and we're so excited about that. It is Women's History Month. I do have my.
Congratulations, Dr. Pugh.
That's right. Congratulations.
Thank you. Can you guys hear me?
But we also have another special guest with us, and our Flint Board of Education president, Mr. Michael Kleck. And so he's been with us before. So neither one of them, I don't think, need an introduction because there's some pretty household names now.
Right.
There's some pretty household names. So Dr. Pugh, thank you for joining us. We appreciate it so much.
Thank you. Can you guys hear me?
And so I can't hear Dr.
And we're gonna get-
Pugh. Has she said anything?
Yeah, she did. And we're gonna get started. I'm going to, let's see, Vicki, are you fixing it? Because we can't hear Dr. Pugh.
No, thank
No,
Can you say something, Dr. Pugh?
Can you hear me?
I can hear her saying, but not through. Okay, say it now.
Hello?
Gotcha.
I
Can you
can't
hear
her?
I can
No,
hear her
sorry.
now.
Oh, I got you
Turn me
now.
down because I'm too loud in my own.
I got you.
Can you hear
now?
I
Michael?
can't hear
No,
anything.
it's all the way down now. I good now.
I can't hear anything now.
Thank you, man.
No.
So we're
Can you
just,
hear me now?
I can hear
Yes.
her now. Yep. There we go. Can you hear her?
Thank you for
No,
having me.
but your mic is real loud over here. Like,
it sure is.
Mine's is.
Mhm.
Okay, what about your? I can't hear Dr. Pugh.
So we're just, all we have to do is get Michael in there and then we will be ready to go because we got some questions. We got some questions.
We do. And we thought it was important to bring both the State Board of Education and our local Board of Education presidents together to talk about how these roles, what they mean to each other.
Right, because, before we have this conversation, we were saying we need to let people know how do they work together? How do the state board and the local board interact? What is the role of the state board? Because I don't know if everybody understands, how you all can, if you work together, how you work together. So, Dr. Pugh, do you want to get started with that before we just jump into our questions that we have for you all?
Thank you. So, absolutely. So, the State Board of Education, by constitution here in Michigan, is responsible for the oversight of K through 12 education across the state of Michigan. We are responsible for hiring the state superintendent of public education, who then in turn is responsible for Michigan Department of Education. Can you all hear me?
I can.
Okay.
The only person that is not hearing you is Michael, and he
no.
really needs to hear you. He
He
really needs to hear you, yes. So we're just trying to, you all just hold tight. because it
Okay.
will be- I'm talking to the people that have tuned in because.
So you want
You want to switch?
Are you, Pam, can you say something?
yes? Can you hear me?
I can hear that.
Okay, you
Okay.
can? Okay, here we go.
got you. We all set.
We're ready to go. We are
Okay,
ready to
so-
go. So go ahead and explain to people the role of the State Board of Education, how it interacts with local boards of education before we start asking our questions.
Right. So two things that I will point, at least two things I will point out. One is that the State Board of Education is responsible for K through 12 education across the state. We are responsible, one of our main focuses, or a couple of our main duties, are to hire the state superintendent of public instruction, who then provides oversight to Michigan Department of Education. Another piece is that we advocate and we work with the legislature and advocate and make sure that we're putting forward a policy agenda to the state legislators. We are elected statewide. Michigan is a local control state, which means that our local entities are, can you all hear me?
Yes.
Okay, which means that our local entities are, our local school districts are responsible for their, Michael, and presidents across the state are then in turn responsible for their local districts. And how we interact with local districts, of course, I have a relationship with Michael and others on the school board, but definitely I'm able to be a conduit between president, the president, the local president, and our state superintendent of schools. Our state superintendent of schools interacts with and is a funder, helps to make sure that the funding is passed on to our local districts. So some of the ways that we communicate, if I'm hearing that there are things that are going on at the local district from the board, I'm trying to figure out how do we make sure that from a state level that we're providing them all the supports that they can have. Michael, you should know, President Clack, you should know that if I get concerns from your local district, from your constituents, I'm always sending them to you first. To the local district, the superintendent, or the board members. I'm always sending them there first. And then if we're seeing patterns across the state, we make sure that we communicate those at the state level. I can give you an example of how this works. There was a time when the ISD, there was some concerns as far as how the ISD was spending dollars for special education. That came to me through the local board. It was before you were here, President Clack. So I got that word through the local board. I talked to our folks at the state level, and then they gave the local board the process that would have to be taken in order to express that complaint. And that process was followed. And it went to an administrative law judge, and that administrative law judge passed a judgment down, and the local board was able to make sure, the local board and the local district, Flint Plus Community Schools, was able to get that funding or they were able to make sure that they made that funding more equitable. And so that was a time where behind the scenes, the State Board of Education was able to play a role in making sure that the community was getting their due process. And there's been some other instances where we've been able to talk to some community schools and make sure that the concerns are passed to the state and the state's able to do what's needed to happen to make sure that the local district has everything in place. So I will pass it over to President Clack because again, he is ultimately responsible for the local schools there.
Well, okay. I was gonna ask one more question. Because, I was thinking about this, and we've got a lot of challenges here in Flint, and we talked about these the last time you were on. And a lot of urban communities have these challenges, whether we're talking around education, whether we're talking about schools closing, the dwindling number of students that we have, the underpayment of teachers. And we can go on and on and on, but then, we've had a water crisis to deal with that we're still dealing with. We've had COVID, so we've got these public health issues going on. So, we were talking with President Clack about what are they going to do to put him, what are they doing to address those things? And is there any kind of way that the state board has anything, helps with that, assists with that at all?
Yeah, you want me to start or do you want President Clack
Either
to
one
start?
of you.
Go ahead.
Okay. Well, currently, I know we have a few things that are in the making that us as new board members have been working on and talking about as of recent. So I think you'll find, I think even coming up in this board meeting on Wednesday, it will be, introducing some things in that genre. So I don't really want to put the cart before, the cart before the horse right now. But I think, I'm positive I put it on the agenda. So there'll be some things on Wednesday that we'll be discussing.
And what time is that meeting on Wednesday?
6:30.
And how can we watch if we can't be present in person?
You can watch via Zoom. Or I'm sorry, YouTube.
YouTube, okay.
Okay, Flint Board of Education.
Yeah.
And it pops up live. I'm asking a question I already know the answer to because that's how I watch the meeting. But it pops up live. What is it? Flint Community Schools, and it'll pop up.
Yeah. So I just really, I can answer, but I just rather wait before we discuss it.
Okay. Well, what about you, Dr. Pugh? Is there anything that you all have to do with that, or do you all look at those things as we talk about what's going on in Flint, especially in light of, I forgot to say in her introduction that she was the Chief Public Health Advisor for the city of Flint. So you're well aware of everything that took place. So are there ways that the State Board of Education helps support us in these efforts or challenges that we're facing?
Yes, and you know the story. One of the first times that I was in Flint during the height of the rest of the world starting to learn about what was going on here. I was there with the late Superintendent Brian Whiston at one of the Flint elementary schools. It was the day right after, I think that would have been October of 2015, I believe. It was when the water fountains at one of the school buildings had just been unplugged because the water levels were coming up really high. And I can't remember if it was a meeting before that. I think it was a meeting right after that. I went to the State Board of Education and to their staff and told them that they needed to do something right away. They were at the time following the guidelines that we had followed for decades for lead in paint. And so at that time, I told them, no, we need to look at this because this is in the water. It's ubiquitous. It's everywhere. And we need to rethink this. And after that, if you all remember, a lot of the supports that came were from Michigan Department of Education. A lot of the supports that came to Flint came through Department of Ed. So that was one piece that we did. Another piece that we did is, as a state, we were one of the first states to put forward a proposal around making sure that we were testing and filtering water, and that we were doing and flushing. So we put that forward, and that was probably like in 2016-ish. After now, as a whole, we've learned about Flint. We've learned through Flint, and then unfortunately, we've now had the pandemic. So we know that the mental health supports, the social and emotional supports are all needed. One of our goals, and this I'm very proud of, one of the goals that we have is the health and safety of children. So we monitor lead levels, we monitor asthma rates of our children, and we're monitoring the testing around lead. And so those are pieces that we're now looking at alongside what we're seeing with academic records. So we can no longer, we're looking at the environmental factors, the factors that children from Flint are that we see in communities like Flint, to make sure that we're predicting or adjusting and addressing our academic outcomes. So it's not just about some of the basic things that we look at when we look at academic outcomes, but also looking at what are the lead levels there, what are the asthma, the leading cause of school absenteeism. So those are some pieces, but definitely making sure that we're looking at putting the mental health supports, the social emotional supports, also making sure that we are determining how we can increase that workforce. Because one of the things that we knew in Flint is that we could fund mental health specialists, but if we did not have that workforce there, then we wouldn't have those services available. So that is another piece that we are looking at. So those are broader pieces that are now available across the state because of things that we started with Flint. And unfortunately, now with the pandemic and other things that have happened in the communities that we are addressing.
Well, that's good, because that's one of the things we keep talking about is the need for mental health services with everything that's been going on in the city of Flint, around the country, and what we've had as far as the water crisis and the pandemic.
And I should say health, and health clinics, making sure that we have additional school nurses. And again, we have to.
We have school nurses?
Yes, we do.
Oh, okay. Well, that's good. I was just
Yeah.
checking.
and
We had them and then we didn't have them.
Right.
And then, okay.
and making sure that we have the workforce to back the policy up and the funding.
So can I ask a question, and just kind of going along with what you said about mental health services? I know that I saw you in particular in the Dr. Pugh in the news following the Michigan State shootings, and then I saw something else recently about Flint Community Schools possibly adopting the clear backpack, which we talked about a little bit the last time you were here. So where are we with that, and how do you feel like that will help with like the gun violence and stuff in the school?
Well, I think that it's just the clear backpacks were just an added safety measure.
Mm-hmm.
You know, in addition to the security and the police detail that we have at the schools, you know, the metal detectors and, you know, and things of that nature. I think the clear backpacks would just be another additional safety, you know, mechanism, I guess, that would make at least the teachers feel a little bit more comfortable with, you know, with what's being brought into the building. Of course, a clear backpack is not going to stop, you know, anybody from, you know, doing what they really want to do, but it still is an added safety
It's a
measure.
deterrent.
Mhm.
Yeah. Kind of like locking your car. It's not gonna stop somebody from
getting
busting the
in.
window if
Yeah,
they
but
want
if they
to.
want to get in, they're going to get in. So.
But yeah, it makes it a little harder.
So I have a question though, you know, as we talk about all these things, what are you going to do to compete against charter schools? Because it's not, I mean, yeah, we know people have left Flint, but a lot of them have left the school system because they've lost faith in the school system. And we all went to public school.
Mhm.
You know, we're a proponent of public schools. We went to the Flint public schools. And so what is our plan at the local level? And I don't know if you all have a plan at the state level to address that, but what's the plan for competing with them?
Well, first off, the biggest thing is to try to rebuild the trust with the district, with the parents in the district.
Mhm.
Second is ensuring school safety and still remaining, keeping our schools safe and beautiful, so to speak, and then trying to get rid of the blighted schools that we do have. Still working on a new school. That's we're still conversing about that, but competing with the charter schools is tough because they have different regulations than us. You know what I mean? So I do think that we'll be discussing possibly hiring a recruiter because we need teachers. If we do get the new students, the new scholars, then we need somebody to teach them. So we need to discuss. I know the teachers want to discuss their pay. So there's a lot of things that go into the recruiting of students, even though that's the biggest thing on the table right now. Another thing that I think that I've been asking around about was just asking questions here and there was bringing back our early childhood up to capacity. And I think that that's an important component to bringing back students to the district. Because if we get them here, it's easier to keep them here.
Okay.
You know what I mean? If they come at an early age, then it's easier to keep them here. So I believe that, and that's something that I'll be poking around at.
Absolutely, because you've already had those relationships, and my kid has been going to this neighborhood school, and I'm going to keep them with their friends and these parents that I've developed relationships with, and all of that, the teachers, the principals, people.
Well, Dr. Pugh, is the state looking at anything around charter schools and how they've been, impacting our dwindling numbers across the state?
Absolutely. And to President Clack's last statement about the early childhood, and those are things that we've talked about and trying to listen and map a path forward. But as it relates to the charter schools, it was about 3 months ago that we did a report, or it was probably in December. We did a report where the State Board of Education actually submitted a FOIA request, and we requested from the department to provide to us. We needed from a sampling of school districts, traditional as well as for-profit charters, or for-profit managed charters, and charters that are nonprofit managed charters. And we wanted to ask them for some of their financial records and really what we wanted to do is see and monitor the transparent, or see if there was transparency across that was equal across the traditional schools and those other two charter schools. And what we found is that the for-profit charters were we were less likely to be able to see where the dollars went, if the dollars landed in the classroom, if the dollars landed in the educators' salaries. And so what we are doing is looking to push on that. I've stood with our legislators calling for greater transparency and parity and transparency for our charter schools, because we know that those charter schools get dollars, and they don't have to those dollars don't have to end up in the classrooms. It's what we call sweep contracts, and they can go elsewhere. What the listening audience should know is that Michigan has the highest rate of for-profit charters in the country. It is a business. I had someone call me a liar who pretty much heads the organization that charters fall under. And so what we wanted to do is give the charters, these for-profit charters an opportunity to determine if I was lying, and I'm not. And I'm looking for my apology still. But
I hear you. I'm looking for some too. What? Well, if we're going to be truthful around the table, but you brought up a point, and you keep bringing up transparency, and I know that's one of the things that's an issue right here in the city of Flint on so many different levels. And as I've been listening to some of the conversation, that's been one of them that people have complained about, is not having transparency at the Flint board. And what are you all doing to address that?
Well, one of the ran on transparency and accountability. So that's something that is near and dear to me. I want the public to be in, to be present, to know what's going on. So one of the things that we've been thinking about was maybe possibly having a monthly chat, let's say, with the superintendent and myself, out to the district, to the parents, to the people in the city about what's going on, because they only see what's going on at the meetings. They don't really see
Right.
What really goes on, and how we really, we only meet, a couple times a month. You know what I mean? So it's not really like we can get the message out to the public unless we go on shows like this, or people really tune in and watch the meetings on YouTube. But if we address what's going on and we keep the public, informed, I think that's one of the things that could be good for us.
So when you say a monthly chat, do you mean like publishing a conversation? You know how you can publish like a full conversation in like a newsletter, or do you mean like you guys are gonna sit down, have a recorded conversation, and putting it on the school's website?
Both, maybe. I'm not saying neither to either one, but we're just in discussions. We're just thinking about things at this point, which is how can we be more transparent? How can the public be incorporated with what we have going on? So that's just one of the things that we're brainstorming about.
So let me ask you this question, because you just made me think about something. Does the Flint Community Schools have something where, like an open office hour, day and time, that parents can come in to have conversations with the superintendent or other department heads?
That's a good question. I don't want to give any wrong information, but I was thinking, as long as it's business hours, that they would be busy in meetings or something like that.
Winter said, what can we do to get better teachers? What are we doing to get, you mean better teachers, more teachers, qualified teachers? I mean, I'm just looking at some of the questions in the chat, and I want to make sure we address some of them.
I think one of our challenges is having certified teachers, come and stay here.
Don't say they come, they get and they leave, because that sounds just like the police department, the fire department. That Flint is just the training ground for people to go other places.
Okay, I won't say it.
Help us, Dr. Pugh. Help us.
Is it a money thing? Other districts pay more?
I believe that might be one of the reasons.
It's with, yeah, I mean, I think that we have to acknowledge the fact that these are issues that are longstanding issues in our urban districts. I think when you talk about this is no different a story than when you talk about the city as a whole and the emergency management model. There, it's the same thing that happens in the schools. The schools have been a smash and grab. We across the state, our schools have, and some of us will believe, purposefully dismantled to privatize, and the teachers bear the brunt.
That wouldn't be a surprise. That wouldn't be a surprise. A lot of things have been purposely dismantled.
Right.
We talk, and privatized. They've wanted to do that on so many levels in this city.
And Flint has Flint and Detroit probably have the most charter schools. This is my raw math, but Saginaw has half the size of the population of Flint, but we have probably double the population of students in our schools, but we don't have charter schools. And you hear the term choice, and you will hear people such as myself say that there is not a choice. There's not a choice when you're closing down and shutting down almost every school, and then the only alternative is a charter school. And then let me say, the other thing that I will say is when we were looking at the Part 18 dollars or the special education dollars, most of the children, you all had numbers that doubled for special education over the water crisis.
Exactly.
Then of those children, that number doubled. And then when you look at the children who go to outside districts, the children who stayed in district were more likely to be at the Flint Community Schools, far more likely than those other schools. So when we look at the needs of the children that Flint Community Schools is educating, it's so much different than those in the surrounding districts. And then when you look at the pay cuts that happened to the educators in those schools, and you have to, back in the Snyder administration, right before the water crisis, there was the cuts to education. There was money that was pulled from education because it had to backfill dollars that went to developers like I always say the Caesar Arena. We love to go to Little Caesars Arena, but that was built on the backs of our children and our educators. Those were dollars that came from our children's classrooms and from those teachers. I had I have a very close friend who took a pay cut, lost to dollars that came out of healthcare. And then on top of that, she was dealing with school closure, or the potential of school closures. Well, so when you look at what our teachers deal with in communities such as Flint Community Schools, and you look at the pay cuts that they take, and you look at how they care for the children that are most in need, yes, you are going to have difficulty attracting, and then they can go right across a boundary, and the dollars they could make are more. The children that they were teaching have less needs. And now you add the pandemic on top of that and what was going on there and the great exodus of educators. Yes. And so I will pause there. There are things, but now it's an issue across the board, where again, unfortunately, it was something that Flint was dealing with alone. Now we're seeing it across the nation, definitely across the state of Michigan. And so we have to come up with innovative ways of getting teachers, retaining teachers, keeping
And getting some too.
getting teachers.
Well, wow. Well, when was it? When you were on before, I remember one of the numbers we got was that about almost 75% of the Hamity students are Flint. They're Flint residents. I mean, so what do we do? I mean, we used to, when you look at education, I mean, we used to have sports. We don't even have that like we used to
send your kids out of district.
Right. And now you don't have to sneak to do anything. You don't have to make up a story. We don't have athletics and sports. And Flint was known. I mean, we were known for great athletes coming out. You know how many times we put you all up there in Saginaw, Pam? Come on.
Not that I don't remember.
I had to. I'm sorry. She said she doesn't remember.
I heard you try to sneak that in.
I know, I tried, but but we were known. But what happened to our athletics? I mean, it's like
we produced some ball players for real.
And now you don't hear that anymore. You know, all of our athletes, and not all of them, but a lot of them are at other schools. You know, they're in other school districts because, I mean, we haven't kept up. And so what do we do about that?
We're able to recruit our kids and make super
what
teams.
parent wouldn't want their child playing football in a stadium, but what child would want to play, would want to run around?
Because they're trying to get to the next level.
Of course they are. They, so there's so many different hurdles we have to jump. Just to compete, just to exist. You know what I mean? So.
Right. And
Hamity has that beautiful new football stadium.
Right.
It's nice.
It's nice.
Field, track.
And our schools are anchors. Our schools are anchors.
They should be, yeah.
We've long known that. I was talking to someone out of state just last week, and we were talking about what we call non-entitlement communities. Well, they're communities that don't have a city government. And how typically when those communities, a lot of times there's pressure to kind of like annex or get rid of those communities and push them into other communities. And so
Mhm.
they said the first thing that they see happens is they get rid of the schools. They get rid of the schools, you disperse community. Um,
And we've seen that in this city, and we've especially seen it on the north side of Flint. You can go and look on the east side. You see it there. I mean, it's just
All the sides, really.
yeah, I know. All around,
Because we had schools, there were schools
everywhere. And had you been here in person, I wouldn't have said that because I know you would have gotten me, Dr. Q, when I made my little crack about Saginaw. So I got brave because you weren't here. But since
But it was a big deal
It was
though
a big
when
deal.
our city schools
Mhm.
played against
Right.
Saginaw. That was a big
it was
deal.
a big deal when we
It
played
was.
against each other. We can't even play against each other.
games.
I mean, because we don't have each other to play against.
Right,
And
right.
so, I mean, I guess I'd like to hear from you because we talked about these ESSER funds. So I'd like to hear, maybe he should talk to the audience about your thoughts around that. And then maybe Dr. Pugh can tell us how other communities, what some of the other places are doing with theirs. But what are we doing? Give us an update.
Well, we actually are going to be discussing that on Wednesday.
Oh, we have to tune in Wednesday. Oh,
That's one
Mike
of the.
said he not.
He said,
still
tune
the
in.
meetings.
That's
Tune
one
in
of
if
the
you want to
discussion
know
items.
what's
So,
going on.
That's
I just
right.
I just want to include
And you-
everybody.
Yes, no,
So you all better tune in to the board meeting this
I was going to say,
Wednesday.
it sounds like there are going to be a lot of really important things on the agenda. And one of the things that we need to remember and recognize is that whether you have a child in Flint Community Schools or not, what happens in Flint Community Schools impact all of us. So it's very important that we're all paying attention and staying in the know about what's happening in our school district, because that's our school.
That's
district.
right. So what are other communities doing? If you can share that information, Dr. Pugh.
Well, we hope to have a report soon, and that's something that you were at our board meeting in January, and I think that we talked about that, is that we are anxious to see where those dollars have gone and how they are being spent. As a member of the State Board of Education, as the president of the State Board of Education, that is definitely something that I will want to know, is make sure that the dollars went where they wanted to go. I want to make sure that the fact that we just had a pandemic, which really showed us again how environments are so intricately linked to the health of children and children being able to show up at school and their health and their academic outcomes. And so wanting to make sure that those dollars have been spent, if any dollars have gone to make sure our buildings are being made more healthy and more sound. So that is something that we will be getting a report on. And I'll look forward to answering that. And I know that districts like Flint, I know that they will spend the dollars wisely. And the reason why we have to do that is because I have 2 board members myself, let alone a whole federal and state legislators that don't want to see our communities get these dollars. They're always talking about
Right.
the amount that came to these districts. So we know we have to spend that money and make sure that it's spent the right way. Now, the problem is, just like we talked, just like President Plack said, just like you said, Mayor Weaver, these are long-standing problems. They did not just start with the pandemic. In Flint, definitely, for many reasons, the disinvestment, the smashing of, like we said, the smash and grab of students or of buildings, and then the water crisis, the pandemic. All of those things have been over decades. And so it is going to take some time to be able to fix these problems. And then, like we said, now we don't have the human, we don't have bus drivers, we don't have teachers. So we get the money, but now we've got to try to make sure we can draw back those people who we've so long disrespected, so long, pushed out of their profession. So now that we have the dollars, now we have to get the people back. So we know that there's a lot that needs to happen there when we talk about making sure that our schools are safe and making sure that we have the environmental safeties. We have to make sure we have the professionals that can do that the right way. With all of these dollars that went out across the country, there's a shortage of professionals, and then there was a shortage of supplies. So part of what I do also is advocate for our school districts to be able to have the cover, the room, the space to not just throw money at the problem, but really be able to address these long-standing, decades-old issues. And now that we have these resources, we do it the right way, that we're not pressured to just spend the dollars, and then we push back on those who don't want to see us fix our problems. So
What do you have to say, President Clark?
I agree.
You-
I agree.
Yeah, it's true.
It is.
It's true.
It is.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Wow.
And so, I think about that a lot. I think about that a lot as we drive around and we see our schools and we see the condition of the buildings.
Mhm.
And I remember even during COVID, one of the things we've been talking about was the quality of the buildings. And we know we've got some buildings that are in disrepair and disarray. And I just wonder if we'll be able to do, what's necessary. There's a lot riding on your shoulders. And not just you, I mean, the whole board.
Right.
Right.
No, but we have, recently, reopened up the bidding process in some of our buildings.
How's that going? Like, where are you in that process?
We are currently in the preliminary phases with our contractors for bids.
Mhm.
So we're moving.
I'm hoping to see some of those buildings kind of get
We
a
should be.
fresh new life
Oh
and.
yeah, we should, especially with the demolition. We should be
Mhm.
breaking some ground here.
Okay.
Hopefully before the end of the year.
I mean, that would be nice
Yeah.
because, we said this before, if you want to see a successful, thriving city, you need a successful, thriving school district, and one feeds the other. They're so intertwined that you can't separate them.
And
And so, it's important to all of
well, and the
us.
fact that the Flint Community School model was
Right.
the model that we used across the country,
Mhm.
and to see what's happening now with the schools, it would be nice to just get some of that former, I don't know, shine back.
Right.
Mhm. Shine, respect, pride.
Mhm.
All
Yes.
all of those things.
All of that. Mhm.
absolutely,
Mhm.
absolutely.
So, well, then I have a question for you, Dr. Pugh, because we always say that all politics are local.
Mhm.
That's what we talk about,
Mhm.
is all politics are local, because so many times people will go to those federal, they want to vote for everything else, but they don't look and see who are we putting on school boards, who are we putting in council seats, commissioner seats, those kinds of things. So while we know that local politics has so much of an impact on your day-to-day life, tell the people why they need to be tuned in to what is going on at the state level, because like you said, there's still a role that the state plays with looking at, setting priorities and looking at things all across the state. So why should people be paying attention at the state level? You tell us, please.
So we can see across the country, where I could just start with seeing across the country how education has become a political weapon by many, and we take hits, and we're making sure that we're standing firm, standing strong. And I'm talking about simple things like children being able to learn about their history.
I'm gonna ask you about that.
Wiping out Black history. I mean, that
Mhm.
is a few years ago would have been unheard of, but now it is the norm. I had a state board member that showed up Black History Month. And what they wanted to present was to do away with diversity, equity, and inclusion funding that would go to schools. And that was the resolution that they wanted my board members and I to pass. So it was like, get out of here. We're not even putting that on the agenda. Now, back up a few months ago, we had legislators that would have put forward an agenda that would have made it difficult for us to learn about our history. But we see that down the 75 corridor. We see in Florida. Here, we also see this term used, which means a lot. Parent engagement and parents' rights. Yes, parents have rights. We all know this. But there are people who have taken and weaponized those words and try to make it seem as if we don't believe in parents' rights, and they build up and manufacture problems that don't exist, or if they do exist, President Clack has the wherewithal to address that on the local issue, but on the state level, they're trying to push those pieces down. I talked about the funding, making sure that our State Board of Education is putting forward guidance to help us through this. I hear a lot of our districts surrounding you, north of you, and then in the surrounding areas, I've had calls where some students are having difficulty celebrating Black History Month, and making sure that we can weigh in uh, and making sure that we're giving the best guidance that we can to districts. And so again, where there's things that come up that President Clack and the superintendent there at the local level have issues with, and across the state, we're there to listen. If listening to what's going on in Muskegon Heights, not too far, they have having issues where day by day we're trying to hold things together so that the students, when they get to school, they have teachers at all in their building. So those are some of the things that we're working with in addition.
Those are things you would never think that you'd even have to have conversation about.
And having the right
teachers there.
Right.
Right.
And having the right people who will push back and have no problem with standing firm for our children and our educators and all children, and in particular our districts. Yes.
Wow.
So we have Black history.
We definitely do.
I mean, but what have we had any issues around
With
that?
people trying to ban
Not
our
with me.
history.
Mm-hmm.
You know,
It hasn't come up.
Not with me.
Mhm.
No, but I think anyone that is, parent, scholar, administrator who's dealt with me pretty much already knows how I'm going to come when it comes to our history.
Mhm.
Right, right.
I've, even teaching before, I've had worked out with my principal to have Black History every Wednesday or
Mhm.
something like that. So I don't believe in wiping out our history or
Right.
erasing or not teaching what a real our real history.
Exactly.
Right.
I also am a firm believer in teaching other than Martin, Malcolm, and,
Right.
but not so much to say the little knowns, but the ones that don't get as much recognition
Right.
as those. So
Right.
Well, it was like hidden figures. We would
Right.
never have known, and we need to know that. I mean, we've made accomplishments and achievements in so many areas that people don't want us to know about.
I just learned about the first Black nurse.
Mm-hmm.
I had no idea.
what about the spotlight?
Right.
Stop.
And did you know that Winnie Mandela is a social worker? She was a social worker. Okay, come on now. Okay, so we're going.
I feel like I should have known.
You
that.
should have.
But I'm about to run with that one.
See, but I do see in the chat, it was said that for people that had just tuned in, could you explain? Let's see, what did it say? Could you explain something about your role again, Dr. Pugh?
So I am
President of the State Board of Education.
President of the State Board of Education. And so while we are responsible for, we set standards, whereas the local district sets the curriculums and determines the curriculum, the State Board of Education sets standards. That's another piece. And I explained earlier that we are responsible for K through 12 education across the state. And some of the things that we are responsible for is speaking policy, stating a policy agenda, working with the legislators, hiring the state superintendent of education, who also works with the Department of Education, who then works very closely with the local districts. I will say, here in Michigan, one piece, and I say this all the time, that no matter what the child's race is, no matter what a child's gender identity is, no matter who a child is, they need to go to schools and make sure that they are in supportive environments. And that's a space here in Michigan being greatly challenged. again, has been greatly miscommunicated. And that's where I could see there be issues in our urban districts, where we're seeing a lot of the turmoil around these culture wars has been more the surrounding districts, but I could foresee some of these issues spilling over into our urban districts as well.
So I saw a question in here, and we talked about it as far as some of these empty buildings being used for housing. Because we've got a large homeless population that we could do, and we just talked about, we've got a lot of buildings. Have other districts used their buildings in those manners? Do you know, Dr. Pugh?
I don't want to answer that. I'm not sure. I'm not sure.
Okay. That's something that you were interested in.
That is definitely, I think, Coolidge, we did it with Coolidge.
Coolidge was redid.
Right. So, I me personally, not speaking on behalf of the board right now, just, I have a few ideas that I would like to see happen with maybe say a Longfellow or a Northern or, with a school like that. But, that's just my own idea, things that I would like to see done. So, I would not want to put that, on other people.
Right.
But, I have a few things that I've written down and thought about.
And even though I'm a wildcat, I would love to see something like really innovative done with Central, just because like its location and its history. It would be nice for something to be done over in that.
Garfield, isn't Garfield still open?
Garfield? Still open?
No.
Still
I'm
open.
just looking at the
As a
building. I mean, as you drive
it's
around
still
and look at some of
construction.
these old buildings with that beautiful architect and
It's still in construction.
and so you just wonder, what are we going to do with these buildings?
I went to Garfield.
You did?
I went to
Okay.
Garfield after Walker closed. And
Okay.
They put us over at Garfield. So, it's kind of disheartening to see it when I ride by it sometimes, especially when I'm looking at my classroom. But then again, that's pretty much pretty much anybody around here
I
can
was
say that when they
gonna
ride
say,
by.
Right, by all-
think about
I mean,
how
right,
schools
our
started
schools
closing
are.
and stuff.
Mhm.
And even like we talked about this the last time you were here, but Northwestern has the driving range.
Of course.
Right,
Everybody went to
Went
driving
to-
range.
right.
And it's still out there. I
Right.
know do people go out there and
I taught my daughter how to drive over there.
And yeah, because it's there. It's the driving range. And so, and it seems like, and I could be wrong, but I think right before Northwestern got closed, that football stadium got revamped.
I remember when that.
No. I think they did something with the track.
Okay.
Stadium has
Mhm.
nothing has
Okay.
ever happened with the stadium. since
Okay.
it was, as far as I know. But
Okay, but the track,
yeah,
they
the track.
still
but
use that track though. They used it last summer for something, didn't they?
I would like to see it be redone.
Okay.
It wasn't done correctly.
Okay.
Just from my own, knowledge of how a track is supposed to look, because I ran track, so it just, I wouldn't have a track meet there right at this, right now. So there are some things that need to be done with the Houston Stadium
Right.
and even the parking lot, and a lot of parking lots around the district. So we have some things to discuss.
Yeah, absolutely.
They're up for discussion, so we'll be discussing those.
So, I mean, we still have a little bit of time, but before we're out, is there anything that we haven't talked about that you think is important for people to know, President Clack? And I'm going to ask you the same thing, Dr. Pugh.
That we haven't discussed. There's a lot of things that I think.
Well, go
people need to
ahead.
know.
Tell us, talk to us.
Well, we will be we'll be discussing the ESSER funds coming up and how we're going to be looking into dispersing those. Let me see. There's going to be something about the mental health, so I didn't want to jump out before,
Right.
So that's up for discussion as well. There's just a lot, and I do want to preach again that we plan to be, as a board, we plan to be transparent, or we will be transparent. We're going to be transparent, and if I'm big on this too, constructive criticism. If we feel that you should you want to tell us something, then come down to a meeting and tell us. And I'm sometimes it's hard when someone's talking directly to you. But they're saying, well, look, you did this and you did this, but
or you didn't do.
but at the end of the day, I'm human. I make mistakes. I have a lot of things I can work on. So, I'm just one of those, it's just one of those things, especially with me being a new president.
Mhm.
I'm new as a new board member.
Right.
All of this is new, so if I'm doing something wrong, just let me know. I'm human. I'll work on it. But and we will. We're gonna make mistakes, but we're gonna do a lot of good too. Our goal is to turn this district around.
It's easier. I mean, you really want people to say, how can we be helpful? How can we
Yeah.
be supportive? What can we do as a community?
Yeah, I was
Instead of
gonna
turning
say
and
the
talking
key
about.
word to that, what you just said, is constructive.
Right.
And to be constructive, offer your help. Don't go to that board meeting and say you guys aren't doing A, B, C, and D and y'all bad. Offer up your thoughts. What would you like to see happen?
And in no way is this saying that I'm not taking the blame for anything, but we're still new,
Right.
And again, there was so many different boards that have come by that have been so I don't want to say trouble. It's just it's kind of, we have a lot to do. We got to backtrack and we still got to move forward.
Right at the same time.
Yeah, so it's like I do more work with the board than I do with my regular job. And that's not a complaint. It's just it's a realization for the people that are watching that this is real.
I was gonna say, but that's
But I
what
was
lets
gonna
people
say,
know.
you're serving the public.
Of course.
Public service. That's
course.
what you're doing, which is awesome. And I commend you because I know that you're doing a lot of hard work that needs to be done that's benefiting all of us.
That's the plan.
Thank you.
Yes.
Because you're an educator also.
Mhm.
And I don't know if we said that when we did your introduction.
Not
Did
this
we?
time, but
Okay.
but everybody knows who I am.
Okay.
You're an educator.
Right.
That's important. And it's important for your students to know that you're involved in this way.
Oh yeah, they are definitely supportive, even though they're not gonna vote for you.
Well, they tell somebody to vote.
Yeah,
That's
I
right.
tell you, but go home and tell your mom.
That's right. You tell them. Tell your family.
They tell somebody, vote for my teacher.
No, they definitely do, and I think that's huge. Even not even just with on the school board, with any type of. That's what my parents did.
Right.
My parents started off as teachers, and I think that's both of them.
And your mother was a counselor too,
I was gonna
because
say,
she was at home.
My dad is always telling me to tell your mom hi.
Mhm.
And I'm like, oh, those students she had. And he's like, she'll remember because of
Look, and let me tell you, I remember it was myself and Tracy. I'm not gonna say Tracy's last name. Tracy got in trouble at school, and Miss Clack was the counselor. And so she was. So she got in trouble, and I was thinking I was with Tracy. Miss Clack lives across the street from my girl. But that's what you want, our teachers and counselors and people that care about you. That care about you, that they're gonna call your house, they're gonna talk to your parents, and certain things weren't gonna be tolerated.
Absolutely.
Right.
So yeah, that's
Absolutely.
that's what you do. So Dr. Pugh, is there anything that we didn't cover that you think people need to know about you and the state board and what we should be doing? Because I remember that was my first time really coming to a state board of education meeting when I was down in Lansing. Because we were there together, and it was very interesting to hear the different conversations. And I was surprised, but it was very interesting, and I was glad I was there. So
I thank Michael, President Clack, and anyone who serves at the local level. That's a huge and tremendous task, and they a lot weighs on their shoulders, and then they're right there in those local communities. And at a time like this, to be on those local levels with the resources, the responsibility that they have to get those resources out the door, and then all the other things that they are responsible for, on top of the fact that we are in a time like never before where public education has come under even greater attack than it was when it was really focused on our urban districts. Now there's just like a attack from all sides, and I hear that from my rural and suburban, from our rural and suburban communities across the state, is that there is this attack on public education, and so we need to all be aware of that, and just making sure that we know that, like in our district, started with divestment. In the other districts, it's starting up out with what I call manufactured attacks, and that are coming out, or manufactured problems.
Mhm.
So moral issues that are coming up, and we could talk about the over testing of our children and the whole
Yes.
testing industry. We need our children to learn. We need our teachers to be able to teach so that our children learn, so that they go out and they have meaningful futures ahead of them. And so sometimes the testing data it's not anything wrong with testing. It's what we're doing with that data from the testing. When we were younger, and we sit around our board table and we talk about this. When we were younger, we were tested, but no one was
Wow.
using that to determine if a teacher was able to continue to teach. No one was using that to name and shame schools and grade schools. No one was using that testing data to determine a child's abilities to learn. What we should be using that data to do is to determine how we teach, how we improve our teaching for that child. And so all of these things have been weaponized. The moral panics, the disinvestments in our school system, the over testing. And so we all have to work together to make sure that we are placing blame where blame needs to be placed, and making sure that we're showing up for our children, and making sure that we're showing up for our children's educators and those people who serve those schools, that we figure out a way, as President Clack said, to provide constructive feedback and input, and making sure that we're supporting and undergirding those people who are charged with the future of our children. And that's never needed like it is right now, today.
That was well said. I agree.
Definitely.
I agree with that. So, Jamaica?
Yes.
President Clack?
Just me.
Did we miss anything? Well, there's always something that was missed. You all have to come back.
I was gonna say, but I think we covered a lot as
Mhm.
far as understanding that intersection between our state and our local school boards. And just really getting more of an understanding of what's happening. So I thank you both
Mhm.
for coming, for being here with us. Yeah, you have to come back next time, Dr. Pugh. You can come in person.
Oh,
And,
you're inviting me to come in person this time.
Yes.
Please let your audience.
You're always welcome here. I mean, Flint loves you anyway. Flint loves
And
you
I love
anyway for
Flint.
the
I couldn't-
services that you were providing, because you were looking out for us before, and had our back when we talked about public health and poison water and even what was going on at the schools. And so to have you at that table, speaking up and advocating and fighting for us, we were very fortunate to have you. And we're fortunate to have you as the president of the state board, just like we're so excited and fortunate to have President Michael Clack for the Flint Board of Education. We are. Because we want to see change. We want to see positive change. We want people, you said, we need some strong people. We need people that aren't scared to speak up and aren't scared to show up for the right fight. And that's what we have to do. And we have to, support people when they go out there and do those kinds of things, because we always want to push you out front and let you take all the bullets, and we're sitting in the background. And so we have a responsibility. We're supposed to stand up for you all as well and help you as you all fight for us and push our agenda. Go ahead,
And I'm gonna
Jamaica.
say this: we have. I'm just gonna say it. We have a Black woman as our state board president and a Black male teacher as our local board president, and I think that speaks volumes to making sure that representation is there when we're talking about our children. We talked a lot about, you know, what's happening in the urban districts and how we've been taking the hits for so long. And so I'm excited because I know that the people who are at the table right now, the people who are leading
Right.
right now are the people who have our children first and foremost. Their health, their
And that's
safety,
what-
their
Mhm.
education are first and foremost. So
I mean, you look, we said Black History, we just had Black History Month, and we said Black history is American history. It's Women's
It's
History
Women's History
Month.
Month.
Women's history is
Mhm.
American history, and to have you two out there front and center,
yeah,
we're excited.
Yeah.
We're excited, and anytime you all want to come on, please, we're just a phone call, text away. So thank you all for coming,
Thank you.
and we look
Thank you.
forward to you coming back on Black Money Matters. So
thank you all
thank
for
you all
joining
for-
us for
thank you
another
too.
episode of
Black
Black
Money
Money Matters.